Okay, so anyway, I kind of misspoke. I wanted to show you this first. This is the support. Now, this track that you see in here is where the circuit card goes in here. Now, there's supposed to be a stop, like you shouldn't be able to see all the way through that track like this. You can kind of see here on my thumb that you can see that groove all the way across. And if you look at the other side, if I can get the right angle, there's just like a little bit of something there. It looks like it might have had a piece of plastic there. I don't know if they're just making them this way or not, or now or not, but on the version 3s, there was a piece of plastic on the end of this track. In other words, the track didn't go all the way to the end like this. It had a little piece there so that the circuit card would stop on it. What I was doing was I was removing that because I'm using a spacer, and that way the circuit card could move freely inside this, back and forth inside this, well, it wouldn't move back and forth inside this support, but it would move up against the support, or the spacer, and be flush on the spacer, and the battery pressure from the other side pushing on the circuit card would keep the circuit card immobile there. So it wasn't really, doing it that way kept all the pressure off of this support. And so then really the only thing the support is doing for you, which is important, is to keep the circuit card from, from this spinning in the tube. So I'm gonna make sure that these tracks are free. I'm gonna use a little file here. I'm gonna make sure that you can see all the way through, so the circuit card can move wherever it needs to. And then we're gonna glue this into the tube. So let me get I'm gonna use epoxy. I'm gonna get that prepped, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I guess I keep kind of jumping ahead of myself here. I wanted to show you after I modified the support by removing those two stops on each side of the track. You can see now how this support, or the card, can move through the support out one end and out the other. There's no longer anything to stop the card from moving back and forth on that track that it's in. Now, if you don't have a file or something, a jeweler's file like I use to file out the stop on one end of the tube and that track, you can just take a pair of side cutters or something and just cut a little bit of that support off where the track is. And same thing, if you're missing a 1/16 of an inch on the end of the support, it's not going to make any difference. You might notice that when you disassembled your V3 or V5 that's already occurred. You've already broken loose those stops on the end, and the circuit card is already moving in and out. And when you took the top cap off your tube, you noticed that you could just pull the card right out of your support. If that's the case, if you were just able to pull your card right out of the support, more power to you, because the support's still glued in the tube. You don't have to do that now. That's done. That's a step you can skip. And all you have to do is pull your card out, replace the switch if you're going to do that, insert your spacer under the top cap, which I'll show you better later, and then put the whole thing back together. You won't have to mess with this support at all. It'll already be glued in. Okay, so what I like to do before I glue the plastic support back in the tube is I like to take a little piece of medium to light sandpaper, cut a little piece like this, and get it in the tube here, and just kind of go back and forth in here, try to get some of that dried up old glue out of there. Now you'll notice I took a piece of painter's tape and just put it on the underside of the window, because you can easily go a little too far by mistake and scratch the bottom of that glass or acrylic. You really don't want to do that. Be careful whenever you put that tape on there. You need to press down on this from the outside whenever you apply any pressure on that window, because it doesn't take much to pop that window right out of there. So you want to get that cleaned out good so it's nice and shiny in there. I don't know that you can see that, but you get the idea. And then you want to do the same thing on the support. Just put a little sandpaper on there and kind of rough that up so that the glue will stick to it nice. Don't touch it with your fingers. Don't touch any of these surfaces with your fingers once you've once you've sanded them, you probably want to clean them off with alcohol, but then after you've done that, don't touch them again because the oil off your fingers will keep any glue from adhering well on there. I like to take and put some alcohol in a rag and wipe my hands off with that alcohol just so that if I touch it by accident, I don't get any oil on there. One other thing I want to mention with the card, just dropped it. Okay, so you're going to be moving this card in and out of the support. It's going to catch a little on that glue on the underside that we broke loose. But what you want to be careful of is this little ribbon cable right here, and I should have mentioned this earlier. I'm kind of bouncing around. I think of something that I left out and I'm kind of throwing it in as I think of it. Apologize for that. But this ribbon cable right here is, you want to stay off of that as much as you can. It's real delicate. You could mess up your display. So don't hold it here on the card, and be conscious of it, especially when you're moving the support, the card in and out of the support. When you get up to that spot, you need to make sure that that support, as it slides past it, doesn't catch on it, because that's a great way to just destroy your Sigelei. Once that screen's gone, there's nothing you can do. You can't really use it anymore because you can't see what you're vaping at or anything. You know, you can't really use it anymore. So just be conscious of that ribbon cable. Okay, so I just mixed up some 2-part epoxy here. I'm going to take a little bit of this. I've already put my button and the little plastic washer that goes inside. You can't see that, but you saw it when I pulled it out. And I'm just going to put a little bit of this. Let me get down here where I'm in camera. Just around inside, about a ½ inch inside this. Doesn't have to be very much, because this this support that's holding our circuit card isn't going to be taking any more of the stress. So then, get this up. So I'm going to get this, and I got to get it past the switch. I know you can't really see that. But you just play with it, you line it up, get it to go over the top of this outer switch here. Your new switch should go over the top of that. It should go all the way in. And then as you look down it, you need to turn your card until the new yellow switch is even with the outer button. So it's not cockeyed, you'll be able to see that. See if I can get in here. There's no light. But you'll be looking in this hole in the bottom, and you'll be looking at the top of this button inside, and you'll be looking at the switch that's on this board that's facing down, and you're just going to make sure that, you know, one is not, you know, like this, or you want to get them so that they're parallel to each other. So that's looking pretty good right there. I'm happy with that. But I'm not all the way in, and I'm getting caught on that. The positive is getting caught on that rubber disc inside there, that rubber or that plastic washer. So I gotta get it off of there enough. Oh, I know what the problem is. My plastic washer wasn't seated properly. Now it went in. Okay, now it went in all the way. The card did, but the support didn't. So I'm going to push the support all the way in on both sides. Make sure my button's still lined up. It's not, it turned. Too much. A little bit more this way. Perfect. So now everything in there is lined up. Everything's in position. Double check. Make sure everything's seated right. My positive pin is going all the way through that disc in there. I can see that the disc is now seated on that shelf that's in there. It wasn't before. Now it is. And I'm going to let that sit and dry. And I'll be right back. Okay, so I walked away for about 45 minutes or so, and judging from how hard the glue is on this little piece of cardboard I used to mix it up with, it's pretty hard. It'll probably keep curing for another day or so until it gets to complete hardness, but it's hard enough for us to press on and put it all back together. We know it's not going to move on us. One thing I want to say about the window, if you're working around in here and you accidentally pop that window out, you can glue that back in. What you're going to want to do is clean up that little. There's a ledge on both long sides, a little metal ledge that the acrylic window rests on, and there'll be some glue remnants. You want to clean those up, get all that out of there, and clean up the window, the back side of the window with alcohol, and then what I use is I use this goop here, just because it dries like rubber, and that's what you want. You don't want any kind of glue that's gonna get hard like a rock. And you just take a toothpick or something, and just with the window out, you just put 3 or 4 dabs along each of these little ledges that are in here, the metal ledges, and then you take the window and press it in, and you're going to get glue squeezing out the sides up here. You don't want to put too much that it's going to squeeze out under the glass where you're going to see it beyond that little black margin in the window. But it doesn't matter if it squeezes out across the top, because once you push the window in, you can just wipe that excess glue off of it with a paper towel or something, and it'll just all wipe right off. And then after you let that dry, obviously, then you can take like some kind of little microfiber cloth like this for cleaning reading glasses or sunglasses, and while you're holding the window with your finger, you just put this over your finger and kind of stick that in the tube and just kind of wipe the underside of the glass, so that any fingerprints or whatever you left on there, you get them off on the underside of the glass. Of course, you want to always keep pressure on the window, because you can pop it out. And so there's that. So this is all solid enough on us. We know it's not going to spin. The card support's not going to spin in here. So the next step, what I do is I build a little, I make a little spacer like this, and what this will do is this will go right on the inside of the cap here, and it'll go in there. You want to make it so that it'll kind of pop in there, so you don't have to glue it or nothing. And that shape that it has lets the wires go through, and so when you close it, they don't get squashed. And basically, I used this piece of mud flap that I happened to come across. It just so happened you want this to be 2 millimeters thick, whatever it is that you use. I just happen to use this. You can see I've cut some out of here already. And here's one that's kind of halfway getting done. And I realized I had one as I was making this one, so I kind of threw this one aside. But I like to drill the hole in the middle first, and then you can trace your top cap around it to kind of get an idea of how big it needs to be, and then you just use a Dremel or whatever and just keep shaping. You can see how I kind of scrawled the shape of the circle around that, and then use sandpaper or a knife or whatever you want to use, a Dremel with a sand drum on it, and just get your basic shape, and just keep checking with the inside of the top cap to make sure you don't get too small where it won't clip in there and just kind of stay by itself. And that 2 millimeters is just right, so that when everything's put together, if that circuit card moves, it's only going to move like a fraction of a millimeter before it hits that spacer. And so no matter how much pressure that you put in the battery compartment here, all you're doing is squashing the circuit card between that spacer under here and the end of the battery over here, so the circuit card won't ever be able to shift anymore. Or initially it might shift just a hair, but once it comes up against that spacer, that's it. It's never going to move after that, or shouldn't. So now all that's left is just to put this thing in the vise and to put the top cap back on. Okay, so I got it. I got the top on. I've made sure that the wires aren't going to get pinched or anything inside. The spacer's where I want it. And so I got the cap on, just on there, just, you know, barely with my fingers. It needs to be compressed into the tube still. So the biggest pain with these is that so when you're putting this back on, the top cap it'll want to cock one way or the other. So, like for instance, you know, if you're looking at it on this one, as I start to compress the vise, the cap will want to go one way or go the other way, and it won't ever want to go on straight. So what I do to make that easier is, as soon as it wants to go one way more than the other, I'll use the edge of this little pocket knife. I've got a little fingernail file on here for the screwdriver tip. Anything about that wide, I guess about 1/16 of an inch or so. What I do is where it starts to go one way initially, I'll put that in there on that side so that it can't go any further on that side. And then what will happen is, as I continue to tighten it, it will start to go the other way. And as soon as it straightens up and starts to go in, then you can pop this out, and then it'll just go straight on. So let me start tightening this. You can already see it's wanting to go this way. Loosen it a little bit, see if I can. Start tightening again. Get this in here. Tightening again. Now it's gotten to the knife. And as I continue to tighten, now the other side is starting to go down. And I can pull that knife out of there, and the whole thing just goes on straight. And you want to make sure that you tighten it until there's no more gap between the top cap and the tube. And there it is, back on. Alright, well, that's it. Don't forget to put Noah locks on your threads. You can pick this stuff up at Home Depot or Lowe's, whichever size you want. It's only a couple of bucks. Get those on your threads and on your battery cap. That'll resolve a lot of problems. And that's it. Big shout out to everybody on the ECF forum. And take care. Good luck.